Hi everybody, and welcome to another live stream mediumship clinic with me, Martin Twycross. Welcome to everyone who's joined us in the room, and a special welcome to everyone who's watching this on the replay as well. So I do these mediumship clinics once a month. It's an opportunity for you to bring along any questions you have on mediumship, development, spiritualism, related topics. And for an hour and a half, I will do my best to answer all the questions that you have. So if to ask a question, you do need to be logged into Google or to YouTube, because obviously we're on a Google platform. It needs you to be logged in to be able to ask a question. That's a common thing people say to me, I couldn't ask you a question, and that's usually the reason. So the way it works is you put your questions in the chat box and I'll work through them one at a time. You can make a modest donation through Super Chat, which is the $ at the bottom of the chat box. And if you do that, I will then prioritize your questions. So I can see, Patricia, you've already made a super chat donation, which is wonderful. So thank you very much. Welcome to Patricia and Amy May. And if you have questions, feel free to start loading them up in the box as well. One thing I will say as well is that at this moment in time, I do actually have a Black Friday sale that has literally just started today on my website, martintwycross.com. So there's 10% off all my products with the exception of physical CDs. So apart from physical CDs, which cost a lot of money to ship these days, there's 10% off all the rest of the products on my website, martintwycross.com. Do check it out if you're interested. So before I get on to Patricia's questions, first, someone asked me a question, which I thought was a very good question. I thought I'd bring it to the mediumship clinic tonight, because I think many other people would probably want to hear the answer to it. And the question is, what is the one thing that made the biggest difference to your mediumship development? What one thing made the biggest difference to your mediumship development? And for me, the one thing that made the biggest difference was understanding the theory that underpins mediumship. I used to go along to circles and people would say, make a link, get a connection, give off, as the terminology used to go. The old-fashioned terminology, make a link and give it off. And I used to think, well, how do I do this? How am I supposed to connect to the spirit world? How does mediumship work? What am I supposed to be doing? What's going to help me make it work? And people weren't answering my questions. And so over all the courses and reading I did, I was able to understand the theoretical basis of mediumship. And once I grasped the theory, everything else just fell into place. My mediumship flowed so much more easily. People would say, connect to spirit, and I'd go, I don't know how to. And they say, well, just do it. And it's what I call the Nike method. Works for some, but not others. But just doing it is not necessarily easy. We've got to give people ideas. We've got to give people visualizations. We have to teach people the different techniques we can use for connecting. And then we find it's easier. We have to teach people it's from an altered state. And then we find it's easier. We have to teach people the mechanics of mediumship. And then we find it's easier. So in my case, once I began to get some theoretical understanding, that's what made the biggest difference to me. Being able to put it all into a context, fit it all into some kind of knowledge and logic, that made a huge difference for me. And one of the things I did as well, as many of you will know, is that I've developed quite a number of products based upon teaching the theoretical foundations of mediumship. I started by developing a series of 24 videos, which are available from my store. And as I say at the moment, 10% discount as well. I also developed a study program which went into even more detail, which was based upon those videos. And for each topic, you get a tutorial that adds somewhere in the region of 30 questions and suggestions for exercises, etc., to go with it. And I've also developed a number of courses as well. If you just want to isolate certain areas to work with, then the courses are a more approachable way of doing that. Each course is 4 2-hour plus classes. Some of them have exercises sheets as well. And so there's quite a lot of material in them. The courses are £65 normally, currently again 10% off. So all my products, all my programs, they're on discount at the moment if you're interested. Ending next Wednesday, the 30th of November. So that is the one thing that made the biggest difference for me, having a theoretical foundation of knowledge in which to work from. So if you find that that is something that you have a challenge with, feel free to check out the products I offer, which do offer that solid theoretical basis. So welcome to Omar and to Susan. So Patricia, I'm going to start with your questions. Once again, thank you for your super chat, much appreciated. So in readings, I get flashes of images, mostly static and at times actions. What exercises can I do to develop interaction, two-way conversation with a person in spirit? I do ask, it hasn't developed yet. And you've been sitting in circle, practicing several times each week for just under a year. And thank you for doing the Q&As. You're very welcome. So I guess whenever someone asks me that question, my first point is to try and manage expectations of what the interaction with spirit looks like. We are not having a conversation with spirit. Even an experienced medium is not having a conversation with spirit. Spirit are giving us information, giving us thoughts. We can ask them maybe, how did you pass? Or we can ask them certain things and they may or may not give us it. It's not a conversation. It's important to recognize that. As mediums, we receive information through imagery, through feelings, through a sense of knowing, occasional words, but it's not a conversation. It's important you recognize that. So some people have this idea that they would interact with the spirit world in pretty much the same way you would interact with somebody here. And it's not the case. Absolutely not the case. For the majority of people start primarily with what I call clairvoyance. Then you add some clairsentience, and then it develops further down the line to clair-knowing and some degree of clairaudience. Clairaudience is generally the last one to come in, and it doesn't come in strong even for highly experienced mediums. Very few of them are solid clairaudience, because it's a rare ability. So it sounds to me from what you're saying, you're seeing mostly images, which is what I expect in the early beginner stages. That is what I would expect. So my first point is, don't expect the conversation. The other thing is, when you think about it, for spirit to receive our thoughts, we have to be well blended, well connected. In my experience, often a lot of beginners don't fully connect to the spirit world, or a lot of beginners cannot sustain the connection to the spirit world. But when you think about it, if you're going to connect to the spirit world and send them thoughts to get that thought a response from, you have to be pretty well connected. They have to receive your thoughts. If you're not well connected and you're sending thoughts to spirit, they'll never arrive. So that's important to recognize. So sometimes it comes down to strengthening the connection, the attunement to spirit. And that comes with practices like sitting in the power. But having said that, sitting in the power, there's a lot of people teach sitting in the power, and I look at the versions of sitting in the power that I come across sometimes, and for me, it's not what I call sitting in the power based upon my knowledge. If you want to know what I consider sitting in the power, check out on my channel, the Sitting in the Power playlist, 4 videos going through what it is, why we do it, how to do it, common pitfalls encountered by beginners, issues encountered by more experienced people. And there's a Sitting in the Power stripped out version on there. The full version is available, of course, from our website, from the store, but there is a stripped out version you can use just to get an understanding of the way I teach sitting in the power. So even though people tell me I sit in the power and I ask them what they do, often it's not what I consider sitting in the power, and it may be of limited value. So that's important to recognize. But those sort of practices strengthen your attunement. But really, we have to learn ourselves what works for us. And this is something that people get frustrated with when I answer the question that you have to figure out for you what works for you. Just like I have to figure out for me what works for me. How I move into the power and get a good attunement, I have to figure it out for myself. How I connect to spirit and what methodology I use that works best for me is unique to me. You've got to figure it out for yourself. So there's a lot of sucking it and seeing going on. We have to trial and error, just trial different things and see how it pans out. So I hope that kind of gives you some idea, but there is no simple exercise, no simple easy fix. But again, the other thing is people say, well, I sit in circle a lot, but do the exercises you do in circle help you work with different psychic senses? Do they help you develop in certain ways? Because anyone can, what I call, facilitate sittings, facilitate people working, facilitate a group. But ultimately, to teach somebody mediumship well, you have to work with a whole different range of exercises that will strengthen different areas. And there is no one exercise. There's a range of exercises. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question for you. Okay, and you asked the question, do I have a development circle you can join? I don't offer development circles, I'm afraid, at this moment in time. As some of you know, I'm trying to get my focus upon pulling together some books at the moment. So that's where my focus is. So I don't have development circles, and I'm not planning any in the near future just yet. But there are very many online you can go on. Absolutely. There are an absolute ton of them. So do check them out. So welcome to Amy as well, and to Stephen. Okay, Susan, I have a question about sitting in the power. I listen to yours almost every day. You bring the power upward, and some teachers say to bring the light down to you. Can you explain? Now, remember, with sitting in the power, there are a multitude of different ways that people teach it. Now, for me, the way I was taught sitting in the power, and the way, from Glenn Edwards onwards, it's usually about seeing a light inside you and expanding that light out, and then merging that light with a greater light. Some people may argue, well, we can pull that light in to blend with our light, but ultimately you've got to expand the light, the spirit, the soul that you are, because you are spirit, and it's that spirit aspect of self which blends with the spirit world. You can't move to the spirit world unless you're touching that soul spirit aspect of you. That's critical. So we've got to get you into your own power, we call it first, the power of your own soul. And then we need to move you into the power of the spirit world. But again, the visualization that people use for that, I often get people to imagine a greater light, a bigger light of which you're a part, and seeing those lights merge or moving to blend with that light. It's not necessarily moving upwards, it's just moving to blend with that light. Some people may argue that you can bring that light towards you, but ultimately we are moving ourselves to connect with spirit. The spirit world is constant. The spirit world it doesn't come to us. If it did, none of us would have to do any work. It'd be easy to do mediumship. But because we have to go to the spirit world, I prefer visualization, where the spirit world is the constant and we have to move to blend with it. So I hope that helps explain the way I teach it, Susan, and why I'm not probably a big fan of bringing the light to you. Because bringing the light to you suggests that the spirit world will move, whereas we're the ones who, through our own exercise, expansion, breathing, intent, we're the ones who move to spirit. When we're doing mediumship, we have to connect to the spirit world. Spirit does not come to us. So hopefully that all makes sense to you. Okay, Amy, so thank you for your super chat. That is much appreciated. Let me come to your question. During practice readings, sometimes the messages are slow and I'm waiting, and the moment my mentor starts taking to coach me, message starts flowing like crazy. Any thoughts? So what's happening here is generally when a student is working by themselves, they're working in their own power. When your teacher, your mentor comes to work with you, they give you power. So it works more easy. You often see when we get people to stand up and work for the first time, the tutor will stand close to them and they will give them energy and they'll give them power. And when we're working as a tutor, we're giving the students power, extra power to work in to help them. But ultimately, we want the student to build their own power, their own fuel for mediumship. So that I expect is probably what is happening when your mentor is coming close, or your mentor is taking an interest, you're getting power, and it helps the process more. And it's frustrating because they come over, they give you some power, and the bit you wanted help with all of a sudden works, and then they go away again and it doesn't work again. And that's why. That's generally the reason why. It all makes sense. So I hope that helps explain probably what's happening. But I can't say for sure that is definitely what is the case, but that would be my best educated guess. So welcome, Melba. Okay, so the next question, Stephen. What is your understanding of angels, and is there an element of communication between the earth plane and angelic beings? Now, I'm not New Age angels at all. I don't do archangels. I don't do ask your angels. For me, what is an angel? An angel is a being that helps us upon the earth. An angel can be an evolved soul, doesn't have to be an evolved soul. If you're walking down the street and you're at rock bottom and somebody comes up to you and smiles at you and says hello and engages in your conversation and helps you, they're an angel. If you ask the spirit world, if you ask God, if you ask the divine for help and somebody comes, that's an angel. And those of you familiar, the name of the movie escapes me now, Christmas movie, Clarence, Angel Clarence to get his wings. It's a Wonderful Life, that's the one. It's come back to me. Any of you familiar with the movie It's a Wonderful Life? Again, an angel is somebody who's there to help us, but not all angels come down from the spirit world waiting to get their wings. When you send thoughts to be helped, to get help, people upon this earth who receive inspiration from spirit to help you, they're your angels, absolutely. And people say your guides and helpers are angels, but I don't like to call them angels. I just call them guides and helpers. So my view of angels is that angels are those who help us upon the earth, which differs from a lot of other people's definitions of angels. I get that. You know, if an angel is an evolved soul, most guides and helpers will be angels as well. Guides and helpers are here to help you with your earthly journey. You might call them angels. But for me, the differentiation between doing angels and doing guides, it's not for me. You'll very rarely hear the word angel come out of my mouth when I'm talking about mediumship and teaching. Very, very rarely. Because for me, simply, it just complicates things. You don't need to worry about it. Now, if you're into angels and you ask the angels to save your parking space and all the rest of it, that's wonderful. That's great. Each their own. But I'm not. You know, we just, each their own. My strap line, bringing you practical down-to-earth teachings on mediumship and development without the fluff. If we don't need to talk about angels to do mediumship, then why bother? If we don't need to talk about angels to describe guides and helpers, why bother? Of course, one of the principles of spiritualism is the communion of spirits and the ministry of angels. And the ministry means they minister unto our needs. They are there to help us. They are there to help us with our earthly journey. Hence me telling you that I believe that some angels are in the spirit world, other angels walk amongst us. Many of this room right now, you can be an angel to somebody else. When you are there in their moment of need, when you are there to help them, you're an angel. So there you are. That's my view of angels. Probably different from a lot of other people's, and that's fine. Absolutely. Patricia, I do have your sit in the power. That's great. Good. Yeah, and my version may not work for some people neither. You know, this is the thing. Each person, you have to find what works for you. Patricia, mainly the images, but I do get some sensing and knowing. What course class of yours should I get at this point in my development? I would say if you want to get just a good understanding of how mediumship works, then one of the courses I offer is called the Fundamentals of Mediumship. That's a good starting point, a good beginner starting point. And the next one that moves on from that builds on from that, is called Getting Better Evidence. There is also a course, Meditation and Sitting for Spirit, which if you're not totally familiar with Sit in the Power, that would help you out. But of course you could buy Sit in the Power as a standalone meditation as well. If you wanted to go the line of the study program, then certainly modules 1 and 2 of the study program have the basics, the foundations of mediumship and the mechanics of mediumship. So and if alternatively, if you just want to purchase videos one at a time and do it on a cheaper basis, then basically working through from mediumship classes 1 to 6 is a good starting point as well. The videos are a lot cheaper, £13 each. Less at the moment, they're £11.70 because 10% site-wide with the Black Friday sale. But yeah. And if you've got any questions, you can always ping me a message and I will do my best to help. Okay. Susan, I cannot visualize any light as a white light. It's usually grey. The light I blend with is nearly always purple. I see shapes of moving lights in yellow, green, grey, or bright neon purple. And that's fine. When we ask people to see a light, go with what works for you. Don't worry about it. And some people can visualize certain things and others can't. So you just have to work with what works for you. Okay, next question, Amy. I feel like I'm making you repeat what you've probably already answered, but if I hear names or phrases as a thought, not as an image, but as a thought of thoughts, is this clairaudience? Now, clairaudience is tricky. And clairaudience, there's two types of clairaudience. There's what I call true clairaudience and what I call perceived clairaudience. And perceived clairaudience is basically where your mind likes to work with words. I studied as a hypnotherapist, and within NLP, there's a theory that we have different kinds of people. Some people are visual, like to work with imagery. Some people are auditory, like to work with words, sounds, and their language, but your language will often show you what you are. Those who say, "Oh, I hear what you're saying," that's what we call auditory. Someone saying, "I see what you mean," that's visual. Kinesthetic or tactile is, I feel it, yeah, I get it, that's kind of more what we call kinesthetic, tactile. And visual people would work a lot with clairvoyance. Tactile, kinesthetic people would work a lot with clairsentience, and auditory people would tend to want to work with clairaudience. Now, even if you get information from spirit and you're not receiving it as words, your mind can convert it to words. And that's what I call perceived clairaudience. It's usually given away by people who say, they're telling me they're about 5'10", 5'11". And it's like, no, they would tell you what they are. They wouldn't tell you a range. Or they're telling me they were in their early 80s. No, they would say, I'm 82, thank you very much. They'd be much more specific than that. So what they say, they're actually feeling it or sensing it, or even a bit of knowing, but it's given as words. I'm hearing it, and they're not. And when I'm working with people, often they'll say, I'm hearing it, and I'll say, how did you get it? And they'll go, oh, I saw an image. Oh, I felt it. And I said, yes, but you actually use the words hearing because that's your preferred modality. That's your preferred representational system of auditory. So that's what we call perceived clairaudience. You're not really hearing it, but you're converting it by saying you're hearing it. And then we have what we call true clairaudience, which is where you truly hear it within your head or within your ears. You can hear it objectively, almost spoken into your ear, or you can just hear it within your mind, subjective. But you might hear the name shouted out, Bill, or the name Margaret shouted out within your head, and you give it and it's correct. But true clairaudience has to be accurate. If it's not accurate, it's not true clairaudience. If it's wrong, then you're not actually really hearing it. Our own mind, remember, is capable of throwing names up, or capable of even speaking a name into our mind. So it's got to be coming from spirit. And then you have what we call clairknowing, which is where it appears in your mind, where the word appears in your mind, but you didn't really hear it neither. And that becomes a bit of a blur between that and clairaudience. Now, I very rarely get clairaudience. It's quite infrequent. It's only the occasional word in a demonstration. But I do have things appear in my mind, especially names as well. And it's just like it's there in my mind, but I didn't hear it. It's there. Now that is clairknowing. And clairknowing generally comes before true clairaudience, in my experience with most mediums. So what you may be getting then is what I call clairknowing. That's possible as well. And, your statement is it comes in as a thought. And claircognizance, clairknowing is you receiving thoughts. When you think about it, everything that comes from the spirit world is a thought. The thought comes into our mind. Our mind either converts that thought to imagery, that thought to feelings, that thought to words, or that thought stays as it is as a thought. And that's pure clairknowing, claircognizance. Does that make sense? I hope it does anyway. So yeah. So I hope that helps answer your question. But I haven't repeated too much there, I'm pretty sure. Okay, Melba, your question. Thoughts on magic. This is a difficult one for me because I'm not really into magic in any way, shape, or form, nor have I studied it. And I don't do it. I know some people do, but I had practically no exposure to it. So I really can't offer you many thoughts at all on it because it, I don't do it. I'm not involved in it. And I don't know many people who are. Most of the people I know who are mediums have no involvement in it neither. And is it needed for mediumship? Absolutely not. No. But if that's your bag and you're into it, that's great. Anybody else listen to this and they're interested in it, that's great. Yeah, there's horses for courses. There's pathways for everybody. It's just not part of my pathway. It's not something that's ever interested me enough to go and explore. There's too many other things within the movement, within mediumship, within spiritualism, within the spiritual area that interest me way more. So it's probably pretty low down on my priority list, I'm afraid. So I can't really give you any thoughts on it because I don't know a lot about it, nor have I investigated it, I'm afraid. So next question, Susan. I like to surrender and let spirit tell their story. However, some teachers are saying to find out what the message is. Do you feel the evidence is the message, or do we dive deeper for the message? No, the evidence is not the message. When you give evidence to somebody, you can't say, oh, the evidence is your message. Now, going back in days of old, the old mediums did give messages. The fact your loved ones here, the fact I bring you evidence about them is enough. But in this day and age, we've moved on. Mediumship's moved on. People's needs have moved on. Everybody now expects a message. If you cannot deliver a message, your sitters will be upset. Your audience, if you're doing a demonstration, will be upset. So we have to give a message. And in my experience, if we allow spirit to bring the flow of evidence and we don't ask spirit to give us certain things. If I ask spirit to give me your age, your description, your passing condition, what's your job, how many children did you have, I'm controlling it all. Spirit are not able to bring me what they want to bring. But if I say to spirit, give me anything you like, as long as it works out to be evidential and we can get you placed, and they give me all sorts of things, usually the evidence will piece together and begin to unfold a story from which the message becomes almost self-evident in my experience. So that's important to recognize. Or what happens is certain parts of the evidence have a different feel. Or I sometimes feel the evidence push through to the sitter or push through to the recipient in the room, meaning that this applies to them. I might be talking about a situation. This person was difficult, awkward, really caused a lot of upset in the family, and it's coming through to the here and now. So when I come to the message is there's somebody in the here and now who's a lot like this person, who's creating a lot of challenges, a lot of problems. And it's because I'm getting certain aspects of evidence that stand out that I know I have to bring them back again and work with them again in a different way to provide the message. So we can get what we call the message in the evidence, where it highlights and stands out. And if you're interested in learning more about this, I do talk about this in my Getting Better Evidence course. I go through how to get the message in the Getting Better Evidence course, if that interests you. So basically, and I often work with, when I'm working with other mediums in a teaching capacity on open platform, and they're doing a link. And at the end, I'll say that bit of evidence, that they all stood out, and you just walked straight past them. You gave it, you gave it, you gave it. And it's like, whoa, that contains the entire message, those pieces of evidence, and you didn't go into it. So you have to recognize where there's depth with the pieces of evidence. That's important to recognize. You have to recognize that, but a lot of people don't. So yes, you have to dive a little bit deeper for the message. Now I can see on my YouTube that it's I've got a little circle going around, but I also have it running on my iPad as a double check, and it looks okay. So can someone just type in the chat box that you're not losing me in any way? I hope you're not, but we'll find out. Okay. So yes. So with the message, we've got to push for it. We've got to be open to it. We have to develop our sensitivity to a point where we can get it. That's the important thing. And it takes time. The more experienced you are, the easier it becomes. But for sure, we have to work for it. Absolutely. But I don't think we can just get away by it. And some people give what I call a very generic message. Oh, they send you their love. Now that's a bit too basic. Sometimes spirit come and they're just so grateful to have connected and they're so happy to be there, especially if it's their first time. If it's their first time, it's like, yes, I've connected with you. I'm so happy. That's the message. We're connected. It's just a wonderful thing. And that's fabulous as well. But we can't use those messages all the time. We've got to go for more. We've got to go for deeper. We've got to go for better. That's the important thing to recognize. Okay, let's have a look. So Dave, thank you very much for your super chat. That is greatly appreciated. So let me come to your question. Sometimes I become frustrated with people. I feel guilty, I forgive, meditate and move on. Do professional mediums experience frustration with others, and does it affect their ability to provide a good reading? So we're all human. All of us are human, absolutely. People will push our buttons, people will irritate us, people will upset us, people will anger us. We will find ourselves doing things that we're not happy with. Absolutely, all of the above. We're human. Now we're on this journey of trying to spiritualize ourselves as well. I hope we all are anyway. We're trying to become better people. And if that interests you as well, I do have a course called Spiritual Self-Development, which is, for me, I think that is a fabulous course. And when I start teaching mediumship, I usually start everybody with spiritual self-development, because if you ever lose sight of that, you'll struggle as a medium. What will take you furthest as a medium is your spiritual self-development. So it's a good question. Good question. So absolutely, mediums are like anybody else, and you will find frustration. I've seen mediums work in platform where people answer them negatively or give them a hard time, and they get very frustrated and angry with the people in the audience and may even badmouth them, upset them. Not recommended. So, we always need to try and rise above it, take a deep breath, rise above it, move beyond it. Absolutely. But if it does affect us, it can certainly affect your ability to do mediumship, whether that's reading, whether that is a platform demonstration, whatever it is. Whenever we work, we need to move ourselves to a space where we're connected to the soul aspect of self, where we're connected to that part of us that is spiritual, that wants to serve, that wants to help, that wants to be of service, that wants to uplift. Whenever I do a reading, the thought is always uppermost in my mind: may I be used to help this person at this time. Maybe I be used to help those in the spirit world who wish to communicate with this person. Whenever I'm doing a demonstration, it's may I be used to bring forward those messages that need to be communicated. And may each person be able to take something from the demonstration. So we're moving to that spirit aspect of self, that spiritual part of us, our soul, because that's where mediumship functions from. It's from the soul. And when we touch that soul aspect of self, we can be very frustrated. We can have a lot of problems in our life, but when we go into that little space, a lot of that will fall away. It's the same with pain. You can have pain, be in pain, and pain can interfere with mediumship. But when you connect to that spirit aspect of self, it's like the pain moves out the way and you can work. And then as soon as you finish the demonstration, or as soon as you finish the reading, it all comes back again. You get it all back. But in that altered state of connecting to the soul and to the spirit world, it moves away. So absolutely, it's normal. And the fact that you're asking the question is good, because it shows that you're interested in the spiritual development. It shows that you are trying to become a better medium, a better person. And that's what we want to achieve, all of us. Sometimes I've created a lot of teachings, as I say, and sometimes I wonder how many people will gain benefit from my teachings on mediumship. But if someone can maybe just get my spiritual self-development and just become a better human being, become a kinder, more compassionate, more caring, more selfless person, that's enough for me. Absolutely. Whether they go on to become a medium, whether they can develop it to a high standard, it doesn't matter. If people can become better people, that is a huge thing for sure. So what do you do if people push your buttons? Try and let it go. As you say, try and forgive, meditate, move away from it. I remember once I was demonstrating and somebody who was falling out with everybody actually at the time, if they upset everybody, and they literally gave me a very, very, very rude letter like 10 minutes before I was working, deliberately designed to prevent me from working, because it was my early stages of working in those days. I'd not been working on platform long, and they did it deliberately to try and completely destroy one of my demonstrations. And I had a flyer. It was great. I had a really good demonstration because I just left it behind. I just realized, you just got to understand that this is not about you. It's about them. Anyone may project stuff on you. Yeah, we've got to be comfortable in the skin we're in. We've got to be comfortable with the human being we are. And provided we can say we're doing our best. And yet none of us is perfect. We will all make mistakes for sure. But provided we can say we're doing our best, that is good enough. And we can leave the fine opinions of other people to the sidelines. I'm a big fan of Wayne Dyer, and he always used to say you can be independent of the fine opinions of other people. And I agree with that. Whatever other people think of me, it's effectively none of my business. Yeah, okay, if my actions are creating it, then I've got some degree of responsibility. But you know, if you don't like the look of me and decide you don't like me because, hey, I look like somebody you know, or somebody you didn't like who you knew, again, I can't do anything about that. All I can do is just let it go, accept its reality, its life, and move on. So yes, that's probably the best answer I can give. Maria, I heard that as mediums are giving the evidence, the next piece of evidence is available. I find myself waiting for the sitter's validation before I go to get the next piece, hence the pauses. Any advice? So mediumship for me is all about multitasking. So when I'm working as a medium, I connect to the spirit world and I have a flow of information coming from spirit, and I give information to the sitter or to the recipient if I'm working platform. Whilst I'm communicating with the sitter and waiting for their responses, I'm still connected and receiving information. The two work in parallel. What happens with beginners generally is they get a piece of information, they give that piece of information, then they go back and reconnect with the spirit world, get another piece of information, give that information, and it's one task sequential after another. Whereas experienced mediums hold the connection and do both at the same time. And that's what we're aiming for. And other experienced mediums as well get multiple pieces of information, don't always give it in the same order. As in the early stages, it's give what you get, you've got that piece of information, give the next piece of information. But when I'm stood on a platform to work, I want to give the best possible evidence to get my link placed. So, okay, I've got a lady here, I feel it's a mother, and she's got a lovely personality, she's a lovely person, she's of average height, average build. I'm not going to give that, it's just not interesting, because most people in the audience could take it if they've lost their mum and their mum's average. So she passes, she passed of a heart attack suddenly, and I feel she passes in bed. Right. So rather than giving it the way I get it, I may then say, okay, I feel I've got mum here, and mum passes of a heart attack, and I feel mum passed in her sleep. Would anyone understand it? Yes, one person does. Can I check? Nobody else? No, just the one. Perfect. So we've managed to use two pieces of information, or three, if you include the bed. Mum, heart attack in bed. Okay, 3. So we've used 3 to get us down to one person, maybe in an audience full of 30 people. Whereas if I give what I get and I say, okay, I got a lovely lady here, she shows me herself, she's kind of average build, average looking, average height, she's got a lovely personality, lots of people liked her, and it's mum, and she's very caring about her family. In an audience of 30 people, 20, 30 people, I still probably got at least half of them still in with me. So I'm not knocked them out. So we give certain evidence. So you can give evidence in a different order from what you receive it. But the key is not just, another thing is we get tied into the sitter's response, and unless they say yes to us, we can't work, which you've got to move beyond. So whether the sitter says yes to me doesn't stop me working with spirit. If they say no to me, I need to try and work out what I've done wrong. If they say no to me, I need to try and troubleshoot it. But ultimately, I have to still keep the flow going. And sometimes if it's in a demonstration, you're with the wrong person, but you've got to still keep getting the evidence, and that's not fitting. Who else understands this and understands these last few pieces. I do. I can take all of it apart from the age was slightly out. Okay. Wonderful. That's where we are. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, so keep a flow going, keep talking, and don't move into the sitter's energy as well. When we're waiting for a response, we end up moving into their energy and further away from spirit. Stay blended with spirit and just be open to their response, but stay connected. Let the flow keep coming. Hopefully that helps. Amy, yes, it does. I haven't heard whispers like a voice. I've heard the name, for instance, as a thought just a handful of times, and it's been correct. Just didn't know if it was Claire or not. So no, I think if you get the name as a thought, I call that Claire knowing for sure. That's how I get most of the names I get. That is how it works for me. Very occasionally I'll hear it shouted and it's like, that's interesting. That's nice. That's interesting. I'm hearing that. But usually it just rises in my head as a thought and you give it. That's how it works for me. So if you're enjoying it so far, do hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, remember to subscribe. Hit all the notifications and then you'll find out when I'm releasing new videos and doing the live Q&As. Some people have also asked me, when are the live question and answers? Is it on a set time every month? And the simple answer is no. What happens is I do them where I have a gap, where I have an evening off. I'm involved with the local church, and so I'm there many, many nights as well. So when I have a spare evening, I then tend to throw it in there. If I can do a Sunday, that's my preferred day, but it's often the case I'm working. So it is when it is. I can tell you the next one will be hopefully on Sunday the 19th, Sunday the 18th, of December. That's my plan. But sometimes things get in the way of the plan. So as well, don't forget that I do have a sale on my website, Black Friday sale. Everything on the website is 10% off, and that's the biggest offer I usually offer in the course of a year. And also I will be putting my prices up in the new year as well. So if you want to get them at the cheapest possible price, now's your opportunity. martintwycross.com. If you want to check out all my products, that's where they are. If you'd like to make a donation, buy me a coffee, you can do that through PayPal Me. It comes along the bottom on the ticker. And also there's a pinned post at the top of the chat box. And it will also be in the comments as well, or in the description if you're watching this on replay. And if you want to use PayPal, YouTube Super Thanks as well, you can do that. And to get your question asked quicker, if you want to use the Super Chat, feel free to do that as well. And thanks to those who've done Super Chat. It's much appreciated. Okay, next question. Susan, will you consider doing a live workshop via Zoom? Maybe one day I will, but at the moment it's not a priority for me as I'm trying to get some books out. So who knows? Never say never. But my next course will be a course on guides and helpers, getting to know your guides and helpers and understanding all about guides and helpers. That will be the next course I do, and it will probably be early next year. But at the moment, I'm not planning live workshops or live classes on Zoom yet. Maybe when I get the books out and I've got a bit more time, we might go that route, but not for a little while yet. Okay, Fleming. When I sit in the power, I image the spirit world as a sun and I feel waves going through the body. Is it normal? The thing is, each person experiences everything differently. You know, I say, imagine the spirit world as a greater light. Now, in our experience of the earth, a greater light is the sun, absolutely. And the sun gives warmth. The sun gives waves that radiate out and give us sunburn if we're not careful. And the sun radiates out solar flares and solar radiation, which can cause the aurora borealis. So yeah, whatever you have an understanding of, your mind can create it, whether consciously or subconsciously. So if that's the experience for you, then that's what works for you. Is it wrong? No. Is it right? If it works for you, it's right. That's the important thing to recognize. We all have to find out what works for us, for sure. So hopefully that helps. And in my Sit in the Power, I do the 2 videos on common challenges, issues, questions I get asked. And one of the most common questions asked is, when I sit in the power, this happens for me. Is it normal? And the simple answer is there are no normals. There's a huge range of experiences, and what each person gets is unique to them. So whatever you experience is unique to you. And if it happens to you, great, go with it. Don't worry about it. So hopefully that helps. So Melba, thank you very much for the super chat. That is much appreciated. I can't see a question to go with it, but if you've got one, just pop it in the chat. Amy, I've only ever done Zoom call readings. I'm so curious if what the difference in flow energy is in person, especially in groups. Is the power stronger since there are several people in a group? So basically, you don't get much power from the other people in the group when you're working, generally. So you get a degree of power from the person you're working with if you're working with a sitter. And there's more of that in person, provided the person is giving you power. But generally in sittings, you're reliant upon your own power, whether that's online or in person. But if you're doing a demonstration or you have an audience watching you, then you get some power from the audience if they give you. If everyone's working and everyone's like, sometimes you go to a class and everyone's trying to get their own link at the same time and trying to hold their own link at the same time, and there's no power for the person to work. So whenever I do a class, you're only allowed to link when it's your time to work, because I don't want people sitting there all trying to link at the same time, because it's not helpful. You know, it's not giving the other people power, and it's going to make it harder for everybody. So one of the rules I have is it's a circle or it's an open platform, is everybody is focused on the person working, giving them their love, their power, and that makes life easier for everybody. So, but again, that is in person. If it's online, it's vastly diminished. So if I do a demonstration of mediumship online, the power is minimal compared to what I get in a room of people, all with an interest in me working. If I'm working in front of 30 people in a room, there's a lot of power comes from that audience. If you're working for 2 people, there's not much power at all. It's sitting scenario, it's back to the power you've built for you. This is why some mediums are highly variable, depending on number in the audience. If there's a lot in the audience, they work well. If there's not, and there's no power from the audience, they can't do it well because they haven't built their own power. So build your own power, and anything you get from anybody else is a bonus. That's the key. But online, it is vastly diminished. It's still present to a small degree, but is vastly diminished. So I'd say online, if there's 30 people online, it would probably feel more like 4 people in the room with me compared to 30, because they're not physically present. They're not giving you the energy in the same way being physically present. So physically present is different. I would recommend, if you get the opportunity to go to courses, workshops in person, do so. If you can do a circle in person, do so. It will help you with that experience. But to be honest, training in online in Zoom is very good training because you're heavily reliant on your own power. You have to build your own power. That's key. So it's actually very good training from that perspective. So I hope that all makes sense. Patricia, do any of your churches live stream so we can listen in or post archives for later viewing? Now, pretty much all the churches I serve now, it's all in person in the UK. There's very few churches that do Zoom, occasional Zoom services, but very few of them actually post them. So very few record them. Yeah, for me to record a service, you're recording people's personal messages. And generally, if I was to record an evening in a church of me working and record sitters' responses, you have to talk to each of those people at the end and get their permission for you to use that content within a video, if you're going to make it public, for sure. You know, it's their personal messages. Or generally, if it was going to be recorded, you'd say to everyone it's going to be recorded, and you attending is on the basis it's going to be recorded. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of recording services and putting them out there because, again, for some people, they don't understand what's taken place. And it's very easy for people to criticize as well. And especially online, it's harder online. I would say that when I watch most mediums work online, in my experience, knowing very, very good mediums who can work brilliantly in person, you put them online and a lot of them, they're not as strong, not as good, encounter more challenges. So I think most of us would argue that working online is a little bit more challenging. It's harder to find people. That's the key. It's harder to find people online, and it can be slower because on Zoom, all the technical side of it does slow it down a little bit as well. So these are all aspects to consider. I do have a demonstration of mediumship on my YouTube channel, which was from an online demonstration. That was actually a message from two online demonstrations that I recorded, where I did seek permission of the people who received the messages to put them out there. There was other really good links as well. And I asked people, would you be happy for me to put it out there? And they said no. And I have to respect that. You know, it may be my best ever link, maybe the most amazing evidence ever. But if the other person's not willing to agree to it, I can't use it. I have to respect their opinion, respect their decision. You know, it's their loved one. It's their personal message. We have to understand that. So, yeah. So if I am working on Zoom, generally I do post it on my Facebook page. At the moment, I don't actually have any Zoom bookings. Sometimes people ask me to work on Zoom, but it's evenings. I may be working in churches, so it's hard. It's hard. I tend to prioritize in person in the churches that I serve routinely over Zoom. But yeah, there may be times when I do Zoom services. So yeah, if I'm doing one, I will post it usually a couple of days in advance on my Facebook page to let people know as well. And on my website as well, there's a list of the dates I'm serving churches, and it would be in there as well. So hopefully that will help you if you ever want to see me. Debs can highly recommend Martin's courses, packed full of fantastic information and guidance for personal and mediumship development. Thank you, Debs. That is much appreciated. And thank you, Melba, for the cup of coffee. Is that the end of the questions? Have you all finished asking me questions? I'm sure someone must have at least another question or two. It's hard to believe that would be the end. So again, if you're watching this on the replay, do hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, do subscribe. And if you want to check out my Black Friday sale on my website, it runs until Wednesday, the 30th of November. 10% off site-wide, with the exception of physical CDs. That's the only thing that isn't in the sale, but everything else is. So that's the best chance to get my products at the cheapest possible price. So Amy Lou, good question. How often would you do readings for the same person? Do people want to come back more often than what you would recommend? Some do. Some people would want a reading with you once a week if they could. So, you know, some people say, oh, you start at 3 months, then you move to 6, then you move to 12. And it's not as simple as that. What it is for me is you have to tune into the energy of the person, where they're at in the grief process, and it has to work for you as well. So generally, if someone came to see me for a reading and they're not particularly in a difficult place with grief, you know, if they've just lost somebody and they're desperate for that reconnection, that's when they want to come regularly. You know, can I come back next week? Can I come back next month? And to be kind to them, you actually have to say no. I know people who've lost thousands upon thousands of pounds by going for mediumship readings day in, day out. As an addiction, it becomes an addiction. You've lost your loved one, you need to feel like you've got a connection with them. The only way you can connect with them is by going to them a medium and trying to hear through a medium. And what happens is they go and see 2 mediums a week having readings. And then they've spent all their savings and lost thousands of pounds of money. And it wasn't healthy. Your loved ones in spirit wouldn't want that. They want you to know they're fine. They want you to know they're still with you. They want you to know they're a part of your life. But they wouldn't want you to become addicted to mediumship. They wouldn't want you to lose all your savings, for sure. So we have to tune into the sitter, see where we feel they are. And I've actually said to sitters who come to readings with me, you have a lot of readings, I can feel it. Yeah, and also I feel it's like, it's the way you stay in touch. Yes. And then I'll say, I do feel like I don't know how many you're having, but spirit give the impression it's too much. You need to not do it. And it's hard. So, you know, if it was somebody normal, no massive grief, that they've just lost somebody and there's an absolute dependence there. If somebody, you know, they want to hear from spirit, They've heard from spirit, they enjoyed it, they liked it a lot. How soon can I come back and see you? I'd probably say 6 months. Then if they came 6 months and can I come and see you even sooner? Well, it depends. If you're the kind of medium who remembers people's loved ones, then you may want to push it back even more. Now, I never remember a thing. People say to me at the end of the night, start talking to me about their link, and it's like, I can't remember what I said. I can't remember anything about it. And then it's like, it's embarrassing because if I do 8 links in a row, by the time I get to number 8, I've forgotten what I got at number 2, number 3. And people talk to me about it, and I do my best to try and look like I really know what I was talking about, when often I don't, because it comes and it goes, and not for us to hold on to. But I know some mediums who've got a memory like an elephant, who remember everything they give. And in that scenario, if you know who they want and you know too much about them, then you may want to start pushing it back to maybe a year. Most mediums, the furthest they go back is about a year, unless it's somebody you never want to see again. And, maybe they're a nightmare and it wasn't good. And you may say, do you know what? I won't see you for a couple of years. But that may be the case to manage difficult people whose energies are challenging or who may not be in the right mental state to have a reading. I've had people come through my doors who've had serious mental illness. So much so that I'm kind of worried about, there's a knife block on the corner over there. I want to take that aside and hide it. And in those scenarios, if they had to come back and see me, I'd say, no, not for a long time, But I wouldn't recommend they go and see other mediums, because if they say, can you give me the name of another medium to see? And they're not in the right place for any mediumship reading, no medium will appreciate you doing that. I've had people do that to me where they've recommended me. Oh, well, they're a scary guy and he's got something going on, but Martin's a man, so he'll deal with it. And they send them to me and you don't appreciate it, because if there's problems, we don't want that. But yeah. So I hope that answers your question, Amy. Kathleen, what's your view on providing a reading for someone who's recently lost a loved one? Do you feel it hinders with the grieving process? And this is the problem. This is what I was alluding to in my previous answer. How soon can spirit come through? In some cases, immediately. There's a video on my channel on that as well. But is somebody in the right place for a reading the day after a close loved one dies, and they are in the deepest throes of grief? Often not. I'll give you an example. I did a reading for someone came to me for a reading, went away again, and a little while later somebody else came and I give them a reading, and then they told me, oh, you gave the same person you gave my friend a few weeks ago, a month ago, you've just given to me as well. And it's amazing, because I've only just died, sort of thing, only just gone like a couple of months ago. And then they say, oh, we'll send his wife along. And the wife comes along and she's not in the right place for a reading at all. And it doesn't work. It's not the right time. Had it been left 6 months, maybe. But that's the thing. Some people come and they're just not in the right headspace. They're too involved in the challenges of grief and loss. And it's hard for them to understand what's going on. And people are telling them that you're in communication with their loved one, but if they're quite skeptical, they won't believe it, and that can hurt them even more. So yeah, it can hinder. Absolutely, it can. For some people, it's not a good thing, and we have to try and tune in as well and see where we feel people are at. If people say to me, "I've just lost a loved one, can I come for a reading?" I might want to talk to them on the phone first, just to see where I feel they are, just to try and tune in. It's hard. It's hard because, if you're a professional medium, you'll see anybody when they ask generally. It's hard. But sometimes we have to be aware when the person's in the room with us, where are they? And if there are issues coming up, we have to be able to talk about it and work with it. I recommend that all mediums understand Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, 5 stages of bereavement and grief. Because that is really valuable to help you understand the process. So go Google it, check it out. If you're not familiar with it, it is very useful to know, for sure. So hopefully, I've talked a lot. I don't know if I've given you the answer you want, but I hope that helps in some way. Krista, you mentioned that some mediums miss huge amounts of information from the spirit communicator. How do we not miss this and get more detailed evidence? Good question. Good question. So to be able to feel when information comes and has more relevance to it, you've got to clairsentiently feel into it. If you haven't developed your clairsentience, you may miss it. It has a different feel to it, a different energy to it. Spirit will give you something and you just give it, throw away, next piece. No, that's going to unlock your entire reading. And sometimes you've got to be working with a good tutor, and the tutor will highlight the bits you missed. And you go, right, I get it now. So I may be working, when I do open platform in the church, someone may give it, whiz through it, and I'll just highlight the bits. And then what I do is they finish working, and then I'll say there was 3 bits of evidence that stood out. And I now want to show you. I'm just going to work with them quickly with the recipient. And I want to show you, teach you the depth that's in there. So then, and it's not information I'm getting in real time. It's what I felt into when the information came. I tuned in as well, felt in, it's deeper. What is it? Move into it. Right. So I just work the evidence and it starts to unfold the story. And I'll say, right, and now we can see from those 3 pieces, the message becomes so clear, and there it is. So if you like, I'm illustrating it to the students, how it's done based upon the evidence that they got that they didn't pick up upon necessarily. A wonderful exercise to do to help you get more is we ask Spirit not to give us much evidence. So we're actually asking Spirit just to give us a few pieces of evidence, but we have to spend a lot of time drilling into the evidence. We have to exhaust each piece of evidence before we move on to the next piece. That's the way you learn. And some pieces you'll not be able to work with for long because there's not much there. But other pieces, it's like, keep going, like peeling the layers off an onion. There's more to it. This was their personality. This was how their personality manifested. This is where their personality came from. This is how they feel about their actions now. And this is the message. It all just comes just a direct line from that one strong piece of information about their personality. Because they were angry. They were bitter. They upset everybody. Why? Why were you angry? Why were you bitter? Why did you upset everybody? It's the way I was treated throughout my life. How? It's the way I was brought up by my parents, who were never there for me and mistreated me and abused me. And how did it manifest with other people? I took it out on everybody else. And how do you feel about it? I'm deeply sorry. I wished I'd never done it. I want people to know I'm remorseful, sorry. I regret it. It just all comes out from unfolding the layers of the onion. Can you see that? And it takes experience to do that, absolutely. It does take experience because you've got to be able to receive it. And a lot of that's going to be clairsentient feeling. If you're working a lot with imagery, it's going to be much, much harder. So again, it depends on where you are on the journey. More experience will be able to do it more easily than beginners. It's not really a beginner's exercise, those. They're intermediate to advanced exercises. But don't be in a rush to get the next piece of information. Get the piece of information, feel into it. Is that all there is to it? And then let it go. But don't, some mediums chase the information. Right, got mum. Yes, great. No, hang on a minute. What's the connection between, how did this person get on with their mum? I've got mum here. You had a great connection with mum. You and mum, when you were together, it was fabulous. Brilliant. Chest condition. Had a problem with the chest? Yes, great. Throw it away. Move on. No. Had a problem with the chest. Where? What part of the chest? Lungs. How did it manifest? It was towards the end of the life. She had like a bronchitis condition, and then that moved on to pneumonia because I'm feeling all sweaty as I feel into the energy of it. I've got this fever come on, and that's what took her. And that she was prone to chest infections. Yes, and you know we're given the condition. We're given the passing condition. She passed suddenly. The sudden passing means that there's such regret there, because a lot of the family couldn't make it. It's starting to unfold all this story, and that's all within the passing condition. Don't just get chest, throw it away. We move deeper. We move into it. We allow them to give us what they want to give us from the information, but be open to it. But yeah, I hope that helps. Good question. I like that question. Patricia, back to interaction. That's the way some people in groups describe it. Maybe reality is less accurate than that. So I'll be able to go deeper and get answers in due times, is what I understand, right? I think so. I think I understand what you're saying. Yeah. So yeah, in the early stages of mediumship, we generally tend to get people to try and do 20 questions. Who are you? How did you pass? What do you look like? How old are you? What's the relationship? And to a certain degree, sometimes spirit give us it and sometimes they don't. Will they get it? But ultimately, it's not really a conversation. I might send a thought, who are you? And that may come in later. It's not in real time always. It's like they've got things they want to try and get across to us. And then we're asking for something else. But it's like, well, let me finish getting across to you first what I'm trying to get across. And then we'll get it in. But again, you've got to be connected. Absolutely. So spirit, hear your thoughts. Or your team in spirit, hear your thoughts. But ultimately, over time, we move away from the interaction, allow them to bring what they want to bring. That's where I tend to work. I don't tend to interfere too much unless I have to, if that makes sense. But yes, yeah, in due course, you'll be able to get more with more development, more experience, and improving your connection. The key is the connection. Amy, thanks for all that. Makes sense in all the ways. Great. Kathleen, thank you, Martin. Madeline, if some people would like you to solve their problems, for example, ask what to do, but you have your own responsibility. Absolutely. Now, one thing I don't like is when people bring a problem to me, for me as the medium to fix, because I can't fix any problems for anybody. And as you say, as a spiritualist, our fifth principle, personal responsibility, it's not my job to fix it for you. Similarly, it's not spirit's job to fix it, because spirit don't necessarily give you the answers or the right answers. Spirit will give you information to help you find the answer within you, or to help you do what's right for you. But people will usually go for readings when they want answers, and the reading may help crystallize the answer within them. That's what I always say. I can never give you the answers. I can only help you find it within yourself. But for some people, they may need a coaching session or a therapy session to find their answers, rather than a mediumship session. As a trained hypnotherapist and coach, sometimes it's like you're in the wrong session, but you can't suddenly start doing the other one, because that's not what they're there for. We have to give them what they've come for. Generally, you can't suddenly start saying, no, you've come for a mediumship reading, but I'm not giving you a mediumship reading. I'm going to do something else entirely different. Not unless they're comfortable with that. And most people, it would be a bit of a shock, for sure. But, and when we ask spirit to give us the answer, spirit don't really like to give us the answer. They want us to find the answer for ourselves, because it's our journey, not theirs. They may know what they would do. Your loved ones may know what they would do, but you've got to find what's right for you. One example is a lady came to see me because she'd been offered a job. I think it was working in America. She was from the UK. She'd been offered a job in America, and she wanted to know whether she should take it. Her mum came through. Her mum was somebody who was scared a lot at the time in life, was quite nervous, bit of agoraphobia. She was saying, don't do it. It's too risky. It's too scary. Don't do it. And the lady was completely deflated. And then I got another link, which was this lady's friend in spirit who said, this is the best opportunity you're going to get. Go for it. It's fabulous. Brilliant. And the lady said to me, well, how come one spirit's saying don't and the other spirit is saying do? And I said, well, if you'd asked them their opinion when they were living, what would they say? Oh, well, my mum would say, oh, no, don't go. Because she was against anything change, anything different. And what about your friend? Oh, yeah, she traveled the world. She loved all of that. She'd be up for it straight away. I said, well, they're no different. But you've got to decide what matters for you. It's like asking your friends for an opinion. They'll give you an opinion, but ultimately it's down to you. If it's going to be, it's up to me. So we can't blame other people. We can't blame spirit for our bad decisions. Oh, no, spirit told me to do it. I lost all my money. I lost my house. It's all spirit's fault. No, you've got to take responsibility. Hopefully that all makes sense. Krista, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I'll give that exercise a try. Great. Maria, when you get a message in the middle of the reading, do you always hold it and wait till the end, or do you sometimes just give it when you get it? Now, with platform, generally, the way I train people to do platform is to try and stay with building up who the person is, building up. So the person, first of all, with platform work, you're giving a contact that has to be recognized by the recipient and the audience. So going to the message too soon will not necessarily help you. So generally, we teach people to get, it's the old CERT model: communicator, evidence, reason for coming tied up. Get a communicator, then build up the evidence, then bring the reason, the message, and then finish the link off and move on. But when you're doing a sitting, it can be, you can get some evidence, some message, bit more evidence, message, another communicator, evidence, recognize who they are, message. So it's with a sitting, it can vary a lot. And whilst we, in the early stages, train people the discipline of staying with the evidence, then moving to the message, with more experience, you can be a lot more relaxed about it. I find that I'll be talking about something and a bit of message comes through, and I'll be moving on to something else, and then different message comes through, and you may end up with like 3 different messages coming in at different times in a sitting, and that's absolutely fine as well. There are no hard and fast rules for sittings. Platform work, we generally tend to tell people never to finish, don't do your evidence, don't do a message, then don't go and go back to getting lots more evidence. And then the person starts saying no to you. That's not my loved one, because it destroys and collapses all the work you've just done. So try and do evidence and finish it with the message at the end on platform. Sittings, you've got free reign to be a little bit more creative. Sittings, we don't need to work in quite such a strict system, in my opinion. But even when you watch me on platform, I will sometimes give some evidence and a bit of a message, more evidence, and finish with a different message, because that's just the way it's unfolding and flowing, and that's fine. And some people say to me, that's not following your rule. And it's like, yes, but the rule's there initially to train you the discipline of the mind, to focus on the evidence, to get them placed before you open to the message. But once you've learned the discipline of it, if they're bringing in a message in early, go with it. Yeah, we can relax it more. We don't need to have fixed rules that limit people's ability to do mediumship. But if you're just totally chaotic, given bits of evidence, bits of message, bits of random psychic, and it's all completely chaotic, that's not going to work. You've got to then have the discipline of being with spirit, not psychic, of being getting information about the communicator, not messages. And then by training it with the discipline, it makes you a better medium. Hopefully that all makes sense. But when you're a good medium, then we can just go with how it appears, with how it unfolds, and allow it to organically develop. If that makes sense. Okay, next question. Good question. I like this one, Debs. Have you ever heard of a medium losing their gifts? No, I haven't. Or might that be down to the confidence of the medium? Absolutely. Is it correct that once you have the gift, you have the gift for the lifetime of the medium? The only time people will lose their gifts is when we have challenges. So say, for example, you got older and you had Alzheimer's or dementia come in, then you may no longer be able to work as a medium because you're no longer able to function mentally and do the normal day-to-day things. It becomes almost impossible for you to work as a medium. You haven't lost the gift. It's just that the Alzheimer's disease has prevented you from becoming able to work. And the state of mind you're in, again, it's a challenge. If you had a serious brain injury, it may restrict your ability to do mediumship. I know Gordon Higginson had a big stroke, and he was distraught afterwards because for about a month he couldn't do mediumship. Now, he did mediumship all his life from the age of working on platform from the age of 12. And after the stroke, I don't know how long it was, whether it was a few days or weeks, but I remember talking to Eric Hatton about it, because he was staying with Eric Hatton, and Eric was telling me how depressed Gordon was. And then one day, Eric walked in the room and Gordon said, "It's back, it's back. I can now link with the spirit world again." So that brain injury that had taken place with the stroke caused his gift to just temporarily disappear. So it can temporarily disappear. If you had a terrible brain injury, yes, it could disappear altogether. I get that. But often the mediums I find who we can stagnate as a medium. Now, one of my videos on the channel is 7 reasons why it seems your mediumship is getting worse. And generally, it's not getting worse. It's just changing, and you're not adapting to those changes. So what I find with some mediums is they stagnate. They don't try anymore. They get to a point, they feel they've arrived. They don't need to do any training, any development. Their mediumship changes, and they don't change with it. And they struggle, and it starts going backwards, and it starts getting worse, and they may give it up. But what's actually happened is their mediumship was changing. They didn't recognize the changes. They didn't go with the changes. And the gift is still there, but all of our mediumship is constantly changing. We walk on shifting sands. Sometimes I'm great at doing clairvoyance. Other times I'm great at doing names and dates. Other times I'm great at really drilling into the personalities, and it varies. And every time I stand up, I never know how that demonstration will go. Every time I do a sitting, I never know how that sitting or series of sittings will go. Don't. Because our mediumship is forever changing, and it can change rapidly within a short period of time. And then there can be the trends that take place slower as well. So, yeah, for sure. And I can see you put, could challenges also include physical injury, pain, rather than brain injury as to why mediumship can stall? What tends to, things can make mediumship more difficult and challenging for us. Things that move us out of the power, move us out of the connection with spirit. Really serious physical pain can affect it. If you have to take a lot of drugs, and those drugs have side effects, that can affect things as well. So sure, physical injury and pain can do it. Emotional and mental stress can seriously affect your mediumship as well. You know, if as a medium you've just lost somebody very, very close to you, you just lost a partner or a child or someone who is really close to you, it may be wise for you to just step back from your mediumship for a period of time. If you just lost your mum, you may need to just step away from your mediumship for a time until you feel it's the right time to do it. You know, in my own experience, when we've got really serious stress going on in our lives, it affects your mediumship. It can make it harder. It can make it seem worse. It can make it feel like it's not working well. And we've just got to be kind to ourselves. And, you know, sometimes it's not the right time to work. I may have told this story to you before, but I had a flood in my flat, whereby the entire flat got completely flooded. And I was in the process of selling it as well. It was a very stressful time. I'd literally just exchanged contracts, agreed the deal, and literally within hours, my flat was completely flooded. And I lost huge amounts of possessions, photographs, things that were irreplaceable. This took place on the Friday, and I was due to serve a church, doing a service on the Sunday. And I went along and tried to work. And I didn't realize the degree of stress I was under. And I tried to do an address, and I got emotional in the address, first time ever. And hopefully the last, I hope. And I just couldn't even, I was trying to talk about what had happened with the flood and trying to talk about, you know, a spiritual aspect to it. But, you know, the reality hit home that you've just lost all your photographs. You've lost all those possessions that are completely and utterly irreplaceable. And the emotion of it hits you. And of course, what happens is when we have something like that happen to us, we get busy. We all get busy. And by getting busy, it kind of pushes the emotion of the situation at arm's length, or it pushes the stress away a bit. But then when you allow it to come, whoa, it can overwhelm you. And yeah, at times, if that can happen and you feel it might happen, you're probably better off not working. To be honest, I would have been better off getting another medium to work that night who was not under the degree of stress I was. But we learn from these experiences. We learn how each of us is different. There's no hard and fast rules because everybody is unique. How each person responds in different circumstances is unique. But you've got to recognize there'll be times we cannot work easily for where we are physically, emotionally, mentally. You know, and Sometimes we can work with physical pain and problems. And as I say, it's like it disappears. Some people say you ask spirit to take it away and they take it away and then it comes back again. I just believe that because we're in an altered state, the pain falls off, falls away. Yeah, as a hypnotherapist, we can train people to move into an altered state so the pain doesn't affect it. People can have operations under hypnosis and not feel the pain at all, have their teeth out without any anesthetic, no pain at all. We can do that by being in an altered state. When we're doing mediumship, we're in an altered state and it can move the pain out of the way. So that's possible as well. So it's a good question now. Another good question. Amy, I have an issue feeling very tired the majority of the day. I find that the messages are better and flow when I don't feel sleepy. Sure, there has to be another way other than more caffeine. Yeah. So this is a challenge again, you know. So generally we ask people to sit in the power at the time of day they're at their most alert, because we don't want people doing it when they're sleepy because it won't work as well. And similarly, it's not good to do mediumship if you're feeling particularly sleepy. But then if you have a condition that makes you tired, it's very, very difficult. Then yeah, okay, you can use caffeine as a temporary measure. But of course, you know, I'm not here to give prescriptions or anything, but ultimately, you know, all of us need to get the right amount of sleep. Most of us don't get enough. You know, the average person should be getting 7 to 8 hours. Most of us don't. Some, you know, if you've had COVID, we find a lot of people with long COVID are needing a lot more than that. 8, 9, 10, even 12 hours of sleep a day. You know, and I know myself that after I had COVID, my amount of sleep I needed did go up. So we have to do what we can to try and best manage the condition. So, you know, I don't know if you've talked to your medical doctor about these sorts of things, but definitely anything you can do for self-help to help you be in a better place is what we can do. But sometimes we just have to accept that at this moment in time, that's where we are. But hopefully it's not forever. It will change. You know, I know some people who have conditions where they do really struggle with their energy levels, and it's a battle with mediumship for sure. So I feel for you, but I don't have any easy answers. But again, if we overdo it with caffeine, that creates negative effects as well. Does mediumship work better when you've had a bunch of strong coffees? No. Does mediumship function worse on alcohol? Generally, yes. But not because the alcohol blocks it. Because the alcohol's moving into an altered state, and also most people when they're had a drink get very relaxed, and mediumship is a very energized state, so alcohol pushes you away. I still connected with spirit after quite a few drinks. I won't tell you how many. I was once at a friend's wedding, and somebody wanted me to work for them, and it was the only chance I think I was ever going to get to work for them, and I'd had a lot to drink, but it still worked. So you can work, but I do not recommend you mix your spirits. But it can. As an experiment, it was interesting to see if it could, and it does. But I don't recommend you do it under the influence, for sure. Not unless it's experimental. Okay. Maria, I often see another spirit next to the spirit communicator. Then I would say she is acknowledging she's with a gentleman father. Sorry. Example, do you start reading the second spirit or stay with the first one? I always work one at a time. So I'd work the first one that shows, and then if it's a sitting, move on to the second one. If it's a demonstration and I'm limited for time, I may only work one and say there's another person who's with them, who I feel is X, Y, Z. But generally, we kind of need to, if we're saying there's another spirit present, we have to bring enough evidence to demonstrate who it is for them. So that's the key. But if it's a sitting and you have the time, then go for it. Do. I know some people in the sitting who could bring through 6 or 7 communicators. Not always well. Depends on the length of the sitting. If it's an hour sitting, yeah, you can get away with it, absolutely. If it's 20 minutes sitting, no, you're not spending enough time with each of them. But each medium's different. And I do know some mediums who are famous for giving you huge numbers of sitters in a sitting in a 30-minute sitting, and it's not really wise, because when you think about it, if you've got 30 minutes and you're trying to bring through 8 sitters, that's less than eight communicators. That's less than 4 minutes per communicator. And you're going to struggle to get them recognized with good evidence or allow them to communicate a message. So it's a balancing act. Always a balancing act. Patricia, I've had thoughts that automatic writing can help us attune to spirit, like sit in the power. Your thoughts? So automatic writing, I don't use the term automatic writing, because for me, automatic writing is a very specific form of inspirational writing where the hand moves of its own accord and your brain doesn't register what's written down. And it's only when you read what's written down that you'll become aware of it. That's what I call true automatic writing. So I would call it inspirational writing. Inspirational writing can vary from different levels. Now, if you're interested in inspiration, I have a video on inspiration, which is special topic number 7, working with spirit inspiration. It's also part of the special module of my study program, which goes through guides and helpers, working with inspiration, and then extending that through trance mediumship and also working with healing. It's all similar ideas. So if you're interested in those topics, I recommend that as well. But with inspirational writing and inspirational speaking to that extent, sometimes we get ideas that we commit to paper, or maybe so we get thoughts, ideas that we start writing. That's inspired. And then we get a flow of information from the spirit world that we write out as well as inspirational writing. And then what happens then is we're writing it down as it's coming into our mind almost at the same time, and it flows effortlessly and naturally. And that can be, some people call that automatic writing, but I don't. I call automatic writing where you're not even aware of the thoughts until you read it back. It's just a huge flow. For example, Gordon Higginson did an example where he showed automatic writing, where he basically put his hand on a piece of paper on a table, and he gave a spirit link, and he did his demonstration, giving a couple of spirit links while his hand was just moving. And when he picked it all up, it was another link in its entirety that he had no recollection of. It hadn't come through his mind to give. It hadn't come through his mind to write it down. It came through subconsciously and was written out without his mind even being consciously aware of it. That's what I call automatic writing, but I'm an outlier maybe for that one. But yeah, automatic writing is a very good tool for working with our own soul, working with the inspiration of the soul. It's a very good tool as well for working with our guides and helpers and working with the inspiration from spirit. And when I do the course on guides and helpers next year, getting to know your guides and helpers, inspirational writing is one of the best tools there is for doing that, for sure. As well as, of course, sit in the power. So yeah, I agree with you. Madeleine, when you have a lot of stress, is it difficult to concentrate and get a contact? It makes it harder, for sure. It helps move you away from it. So yeah, when we're stressed, anything, there's what I call long-term stress or situational stress. But say you're for some people as well, it manifests in the moment. Someone starts saying lots of no's to you, or starts saying, oh, you've got to give me much better evidence than that if you're going to prove it's my loved one. Or someone may even say to you, I don't believe you're a medium and you link with spirit. And that creates a stress for you. And for a lot of people, that stops them working. When a lot of people get a lot of no's, it takes them out the power, it collapses it all. And it's what I call it situational stress. You're responding to the responses, getting stressed about it, and it moves you away from spirit. The spirit world's always there. Spirit are always willing to work with us. But what happens is the stress, the pressure moves us away from spirit. So yeah, it can happen. It can happen because you're just generally stressed, or it can happen because of the responses in a sitting. It can happen like that, absolutely. So I think I've come to the end of the questions, and it's 8:30, and I generally run for an hour and a half, so that's pretty good timing. So remember, if you've not, if you enjoyed what I've done tonight, do hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, do subscribe. Remember, do check out my sale, my Black Friday sale. It runs from today all the way through to next Wednesday, the 30th, 10% off site-wide. And I will be putting my prices up in the new year. So to get the best deals, here's a great opportunity. So I do hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got a lot from it. And thank you everyone for coming. And I look forward to seeing you all again in the next one. Take care. Bye for now.